Exercise 3.4. So the following information relates to absolute traders. And absolute traders have asked us to do the following. So take the following into account and open the following ledger accounts on the 1st of August 2015 with the given balances. And here in number 1 they give us the opening balances. And then number 2 they ask post the column totals. So they've done all the journals for you of the given journals to the opened accounts and close off these accounts properly on the 31st of August 2015. So all the information was then provided in number 2 of all the journals, and we need to just take these journals to the general ledger accounts. So when we start, information number 1, the following figures appeared on the 1st of August 2015 in the books of absolute traders. Now out of these 5 accounts that they've given us, 4 of them have been asked. So we only need to go and do these 4. Bank, however, was not asked. So this is just extra information. We don't need to go and show bank. So when we go to the general ledger and take these balances with us, let's go and figure out where to put them in. So when I look at my first account given equipment, I always, first things first, label my accounts. So equipment is known as an asset account, which increases on the debit side and decreases on the credit side. So therefore an opening balance would mean that I need to put it in on the increasing side always. So therefore it will say August 1st, there's a balance brought down of 200,000 for equipment on the debit side. Then for trading stock also known as an asset, also increases on the debit side, decreases on the credit side, also will have its balance on the increasing side. So it will say August 1st, balance was brought down 389,000 Rand to the debit side of trading stock. Then the next one, Creditors Control. Remember that is now a liability. I owe the money to my creditors. Therefore increasing on the credit side this time around and decreasing on the debit side. So still want to show the balance on the increasing side. So in this case the balance would be on the opposite side. In other words on the credit side. So balance brought down 28,000 Rand. Good. Then we're done with our balance sheet section. So just the one account that we have in our nominal section. So we label the account. Remember, all accounts in nominal is always owner's equity accounts. It's simply a question of whether it's an income on the income side, which is credit, or an expense on the debit side. In this case, stationery, remember, is always going to be an expense. So because it's an expense, and because expenses increase on the debit side, in other words, on the negative side of owner's equity, I will say that August 1st has the total brought forward or brought down of 2,900 on the debit side of stationery. And therefore we are then done in opening up our accounts. So opening up the account, equipment on the debit side, trading stock also on the debit side, Creditors Control however on the credit side, and stationery on the debit side again. So now for the second part of this question is asking you now take the journals that was provided for you and post them to the general ledger. Now remember, the journals that we've provided only has the necessary information to complete those 4 accounts asked. So they aren't in balance because there's some information missing. Now when I look at these journals, remember, doesn't matter which journal, it always has a main account. So if it's one of your cash journals, in other words, your cash receipts journal, your cash payments journal, or later on we're going to do a petty cash journal, the cash journals, cash payments, cash receipts has a main account that we call bank. Right? So bank is going to be our main account when we talk about cash payments journal. If, however, we look at an account such as, or a journal such as a credit journal, then remember the main account when we purchase on credit being Creditors Control. So in the CJ and the CAJ, the main account, is Creditors Control. Now, why is it necessary for us to identify the main account? Remember, the main account, it will do something different than the rest of them. So if the main account has the debit, then the rest of them will automatically have the opposite. So if we can identify what the main account is doing, it makes our life so much easier in identifying what the rest of them is supposed to do. So let's, in each case, identify what the main account is trying to do. So if bank in CPJ is paying, therefore I want to show that my bank is decreasing. So my bank, in other words the main account, needs to be the credit. So therefore all the rest of them would be debits. Creditors Control will have the debit of 31,000. Trading stock will have a debit of 13,000. Equipment will have a debit of 29,000. And stationery will have a debit of 1,800. Good? Not too difficult to understand. Then in CJ and CAJ again, let's identify the main account first. So Creditors Control is a liability. Let's do the CJ first. So the Creditors Journal is used when I've purchased on credit. So therefore I want to show that my liability is increasing, and it increases on the credit side. So the 48,000 will go to the credit side of Creditors Control. Therefore the rest of them would all have debits. 11,000 debit in trading stock, 17,000 debit in equipment, 3,100 debit in stationery. Good. Then the last one, the CAJ. Now remember, the CAJ is used when I am not satisfied with some of the products I've bought, therefore I'm returning the products. So when I'm returning it back to my creditor, it means that Creditors Control is decreasing, and it decreases on the debit side. So therefore, if I'm posting the main account from the CAJ, I would debit my Creditors Control. So therefore, what would the other accounts do? They will all credit. So there will be a credit in trading stock of 3,200, a credit in equipment of 4,100, and a credit in stationery of 900 Rand. So very easy. If you can identify the main account, then I can know that the others will all just do the opposite of the main account. When we do this, we're actually trying to balance out the debits with the credits, because remember, the accounting principle says for every debit there must be a credit to the same value, and we can only do that by putting one big amount on the credit side, for instance, and then making up that credit amount by smaller debit amounts. So in the end, all the debits together must give me again that one amount in the credit side. So let's go and do that, starting with the cash payments journal. So when posting the CPJ, the bank account is not asked, so I can just ignore the bank account for now. That bank amount would have gone to the credit side of bank, and it would have stated sundry accounts, total payments. Now that credit that we put in imaginary, we now need to balance out with the debits that I'm going to put in. So all the debits will have its contra account in bank on the credit side. So when I put these entries in the respective accounts, my contra details the whole time will state bank. So therefore my first account that I need to take is Creditors Control 31,000, and I would debit the account with 31,000. So if I go to the Creditors Control account, I'm going to say that my Creditors Control account is decreasing because payments were made. 31st of August, bank is my contra details, CPJ was the journal used, and 31,000 is the amount to be filled into Creditors Control account. So then that one is done. The next one is trading stock, 13,000, that needs to be debited. So So when I go to my trading stock account, it makes sense to me that I should debit it because I've bought more stock on credit. So 31st bank is the account that I am crediting. This entry comes from the CPJ, 13,000 Rand, increasing my trading stock account. So therefore, trading stock, done. Next account is equipment, 29,000, and it needs to be debited. Equipment makes sense that it's debiting because I want to show that I've got more equipment now because I've purchased more on cash. So 31st contra details comes from bank. CPJ was the journal used. Total of 29,000 Rand that I'm adding to my equipment account. So equipment, done. Then the last one for the CPJ, and then we're done with CPJ, is stationery. So I have stationery to the value of 1,800 that I purchased for cash, and this would go to the debit side of stationery. So because stationery is an expense that I've bought, it means that my expenses needs to increase, and expenses increase on the negative side of owner's equity. So therefore, 31st contra detail would say bank. I've recorded this in the CPJ. So 1,800 increases my stationery account on the negative side of owner's equity by 1,800 Rand. So then I go back and I say 1,800, done. So then I am actually done with my CPJ entries that was asked of me. So our next journal to be posted is my Creditors Journal, my CJ. So the main account is posted first, and that is Creditors Control. So I post the Creditors Control column to the credit side of Creditors Control, 48,000 Rand. So these 48,000 Rand, that's all of my credit purchases for the month of August. So when I go to my Creditors Control account, it makes sense to me that I should put it on the credit side because I'm increasing the account with sundry accounts, total credit purchases. I use the term sundry accounts because it has more than one debit. So therefore I refer to the collective name called sundry accounts. The journal I've used was the CJ, and a total amount of 48,000 Rand were purchased on credit. So therefore this entry on the credit side now needs to be balanced out with quite a few debit entries. So the first entry, done. So let's do the balancing out on the debit side. So my first account to be put on the debit side is trading stock to the value of 11,000. I'm going to debit trading stock with 11,000. Must always make sense to you why I'm debiting trading stock. So remember, I bought more trading stock on credit. So therefore my trading stock account should show that it's increasing due to these credit purchases coming from the CJ, total of 11,000 Rand. So it makes sense that I should increase, and I have increased. So 11,000 Rand is then done. The next one is equipment. Equipment of 17,000 Rand was purchased on credit, and we've already established that that should be debited to the equipment account. Let's just think about if this is making sense. If I'm looking at the equipment account, debiting it would mean that I'm increasing it. So I have bought more equipment on credit. So coming from the CJ, a total of 17,000 Rands worth of equipment was purchased on credit this month. So then equipment, done. So the last one that I've got is then stationery. And again, stationery, we've already established 3,100 should be debited to the stationery account. So in stationery, I'm going to show that I am increasing the expense by putting through an entry from Creditors Control from the CJ. So credit purchases was made on stationery, a total of 3,100, causing it as an increase in my expenses. So therefore owner's equity was decreasing. and then I'm done with the CJ. Nice, quick and easy. Now for my last journal is the CAJ. So again, we've established already that the Creditors Control, the main account, would debit 13,800 in Creditors Control. So I do that first. So in Creditors Control, I'm going to show that I'm decreasing it with 13,800 because this debit will be made up of a couple of credits. I'm going to refer to the collective name called sundry accounts, total returns, or you can say total allowances. Comes from the CAJ. So this debit entry now needs a couple of credits. So let's go and see where are those credits. So the first entry was done, 13,800. So now my first account to go onto the credit side is trading stock, 3,200 needs to be credited. So when I go to the trading stock account, remember this should make sense to you. In trading stock, because I've returned goods, my trading stock should decrease. I don't have that stock anymore. It was given back to the supplier or to the creditor. So therefore it makes sense that I'm decreasing my account on the credit side. August 31st, going into Creditors Control, coming from the CAJ, is a total amount of 3,200. I use Creditors Control here because that is where my debit is lying. So then the trading stock entry, done. So the next entry I've got is equipment, 4,100. So 4,100 in equipment, I've returned the equipment back to my creditor. So therefore I should show that the equipment account is decreasing on the credit side. So Creditors Control CAJ, a total of 4,100 was returned back to the creditor. Again, Creditors Control is used as the contra entry because that's where my debit is lying. So equipment is done. Next entry, last entry then is stationery. 900 was returned and I need to credit my stationery account. So again, because I've increased it when I bought more, now that I'm returning, it should be on the opposite side of the account, causing my expense to decrease, but overall my owner's equity is actually getting more. So Creditors Control, CAJ, 900 Rand. And then we're done. So these debits make up a part of that entry on the debit side in my Creditors Control account. So then I'm done with this entry. I can tick that off and then done with the journal as a whole as well. Let's just go and make sure that you are still with us. Let's recap. So firstly we posted the CPJ entries. The one big amount would have been in bank on the credit side. Therefore we put through a couple of entries on the debit side to make up that entry. That's going to lie in bank. So these entries on the debit side all say bank as the contra account because that's where the big credit is lying. Then when we posted the CJ first, we said we are posting the CJ, the big main account is going to be posted on the credit side of Creditors Control. Then we put through a couple of smaller entries to make up this 48,000 on the credit side, increasing Creditors Control. So therefore the entries that's on the credit side would all say that it refers back to that credit in Creditors Control. So first debit we found was in equipment. The second debit was found in trading stock. The third debit was then found in stationery. Now remember, only a part of the picture is seen. The rest of the accounts were not asked in this specific question. So then lastly for the CAJ entries, remember we did that one big entry on the debit side in Creditors Control. That's the main account. And then we made up that debit by crediting firstly equipment, secondly trading stock, and thirdly stationary every time with the returns of goods that we send back to our creditors. So that then allows us to match up or balance out that entry that we made on the debit side. Again, this is only part of the account, so it won't balance out completely now, but in the full account it will. So then the last thing for us to do in this exercise still is to balance out each and every account to find the opening balance for the next month. So then if we do equipment, we find that there is an opening balance, a balance carry down of 241,900. Therefore, September 1st balance brought down is also 241,900. Remember, if you are struggling with the balancing of the accounts, please refer back to term 1's things where we did the balancing of the accounts, the videos that specifically works with the balancing of the accounts. Then in trading stock, go and see, and I see my balancing figure is 413,000, so therefore I know that my balance carried down is 409,800. Therefore September 1st balance brought down 409,800. Then in Creditors Control, I have 76,000 Rand balancing figure, so therefore balance carried down is going to be 31,200. So on the credit side of the account, September 1st balance brought down 31,200. And then normally in the nominal section we don't balance the account or total the account, but because there's entries on both sides of the account we can total. So 7,800 therefore tells me that there's a total carried forward of 6,900. Then on September 1st on the debit side, total brought forward of 6,900 for stationery. Then we are done with this exercise. We will now practice some more in the next exercise.